we are going to go over the Unit 5 Part 2 review, trying to get ready for this test. Number 1, solve the equation by completing the square. Okay, so completing the square. First, I want to see if the left side of my equation is a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to take half of the middle number. Half of the middle number is 3, because half of 6 is 3. And if I square 3, I get 9. Well, because this is not a 9, then this left side is not what's called a perfect square trinomial. So when I complete the square, I make sure the first thing I do is I move the constant to the right-hand side. So think of completing the square, move constant to the right. CC, completing the square, move constant to the right. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to move the I'm going to move the positive 8 to the right-hand side. So to do that, I would subtract it. So I would have x squared plus 6x on the left, and I'm going to leave some space. And I'm going to subtract it, so I would have negative 8 on the right. Okay, so now I have to figure out who I'm going to put back here to make this a perfect square trinomial. Well, I already figured that out. Half of 6 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to put a 9 back here. And if I add 9 to the left side, I have to add 9 to the right side. Because to keep your equation in balance, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So to figure this number out, you just take half of this middle number and square it. Or if you were taught the formula b divided by 2 squared, it's the same thing. Your b is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 3 squared is 9. So 9 is what we're adding to both sides. Okay, now this left side is a perfect square trinomial. So this is when it factors with the set of parentheses and the squared. So it's always the letter you're working with, and then whatever half of the middle number is. And half of 6 is a positive 3. So 9 is what got added to both sides. 3 is what goes in the parentheses. Okay, the right-hand side, to clean this up, I need to calculate negative 8 plus 9, and that makes 1. So to get rid of a squared, I square root. The minute I square root, I slap down a plus minus. On the left-hand side, the squared and square root cancel, so all you are left with is x plus 3. And on the right side, I'm going to try to take the square root of 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. So to get x by itself, I get rid of addition of 3 by subtracting 3. The x drops, the equals drops. And because I don't have any square roots or any i's, I'm going to work this. First, I'm going to work it with a positive 1. So this is telling me to take a positive 1 and subtract 3. Then I'm going to work it with a negative 1. So it's telling me to take a negative 1 and subtract 3. So 1 minus 3 makes negative 2. And negative 1 minus 3 makes negative 4. And those are my answers. So if I was to enter this into the computer, it says enter your smaller root first. So my smaller answer is negative 4, followed by a comma, then your larger root. And my larger answer is negative 2. And it says no spaces. No spaces, no parentheses. It's just smaller number, comma, bigger number. And this is what you would enter into the computer. Okay. So I am not going to do number 2 because we did not do this lesson. We will do this lesson later in the year. So I'm skipping number 2. I am also skipping number 3 because we decided to do this lesson at the end of the year. So I'm skipping number 3. And I'm going to go to number 4. So number 4 wants to know the vertex. Okay, so if it's in the parentheses, it goes left or right, but it's always opposite of what you think. So a minus makes it go right. So this graph is going to go right 3. The number in the back makes the graph go up or down, and it does what you do think would happen. So plus makes it go up. Okay, so if I was at 0, 0, and I went right 3 and up 7, what point would that be? It'd be 3, 7. If you go right 3, your x-coordinate is a positive 3, and if you go up 7, your y-coordinate's a positive 7. Now, there are other ways to talk about this, but this is how I like to think of it. So, just to remind everybody, in parentheses, it always does the opposite of what you think. So a plus in the parentheses is going to make you go to the left. A minus in the parentheses is going to make you go to the right. In the back, a plus does what you think it would do. A plus makes you go up, and a minus makes you go down. So these are our transformation rules. So that's how I knew that the minus was going to make it go right, and the plus in the back was going to make it go up. Okay, we're going to try something kind of like that again. Okay, so this one here, it wants to know the equation of the axis of symmetry. Okay, before I find that, I'm going to find the vertex. So to find the vertex, and this is called vertex form, by the way, when you see the parentheses, when it's all multiplied out like this, that's called standard form. So this is standard form, this is vertex form. Okay, so vertex form is handy for finding the vertex. So the plus in the parentheses makes it go to the left. So it's going to go left 7. The plus in the back makes it go up. So if you were at 0, 0 and you cruised left 7 and up 3, where would that put you? That would put you at negative 7, 3. If you go left 7, your x is a negative 7, and if you go up 3, your y is a positive 3. So that's our vertex. And then what you need to know is the axis of symmetry is always the equation x equals, and then it's whatever the x-coordinate of your vertex is. And our x-coordinate is negative 7. So x equals negative 7 is the winner, winner, chicken dinner. Okay, next one. It asks for the value of the discriminant. All right, we took a quiz not that long ago that had a couple questions like this, and I know my students kind of struggled. Several of them did too much. Several of them did something with with completing the square, but all this wants is b squared minus 4ac. That is the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. You don't have to work the entire quadratic formula. You don't do anything with completing the square. You just calculate b squared minus 4ac. Now, before you do that, you do want to make sure that your problem says equal 0. So anything that has to do with quadratic formula, discriminant, you want it to say equal 0 before you begin. Okay, so a is the number in front of the x squared, b is the number in front of the x, and c is the constant. So this formula is telling us, my cat, Oreo, get down. No, I'm so sorry about that. That was probably kind of funny. All right, I put parentheses where the b is, I put parentheses where the a is, and I put parentheses where the c is. Okay, so into the b goes negative 14, because that's our b value. Into the a goes negative 5, because that's our a value. And into the c goes a positive 2, because that's our c value. Okay, I'm going to make the calculator do all this. So in my calculator, I'm going to type what I just wrote on my paper. So parenthesis, negative 14, close the parenthesis, squared, minus, this has to be a minus, 4 parentheses, negative 5, close it, parenthesis 2, close it. So this is a negative, but this is a minus. So make sure you get a minus there. And when I hit enter, I get 236. Okay, so my discriminant is 236. So let's see which one says the discriminant is 236. Well, C is the only one that says the discriminant is 236. So C must be my answer. Now, if I did try to take the square root of 236, it doesn't come out pretty, which means your answers would be irrational. They're real because you don't have a negative, so that means there's no i's, and you would get two answers, and they're irrational because they're ugly. When somebody is irrational, they're ugly, messy. Blech. So if you can't take the square root of it, it's irrational. If you can take the square root of it, then it's rational. If you get your discriminant to be 0, then that's when you have one answer. And if you get your discriminant to be negative, that's when you have complex answers or imaginary answers. Okay, next page. All right, this problem. So this is vertex form again. So this is telling us how the vertex moves. So minus in the parentheses makes your graph go right. So this graph is going to go right 2. The minus in the back makes the graph go down 5. So right 2, down 5. And this number in the very front is positive, so the graph opens up. So opens up. So if I look at these pictures, I can see though that opens up, that opens up, that opens up. You don't open up. D's out. Now, I just need to see which graph goes right 2 and down 5, the vertex. So if I move my vertex right 2, oh, now these are going by 4s. So right 2 and down 5, the vertex nowhere near that. This one, right 2, down 5, no. This one, right 2, down 5, okay. Looks like C is our answer. And if you needed to, you could go to y equals, and you could type that equation in. 3 parentheses, x minus 2, close it, square it, and in the back, minus 5. And then you could hit graph and see what it looks like. And hopefully then you could definitely rule out A and B. Okay? Number 8. It says, find the value of C that makes this a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so this is what I did earlier. So I'm going to take half of the middle number, which is 7, and I'm going to square that, which is 49. And it's positive. 7 times 7 is 49. Even if this had been negative, it'd still be positive. So C has to be 49. For those of you who were taught the formula b over 2 squared, well, b is the 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 7 squared is 49. So either think of it as b divided by 2, or think of it as what's half of the middle number. Half of the middle number is 7. 7 squared, 49. Okay, moving on. Okay, this one says solve the inequality. Okay, so when you had this lesson, these problems were solved by factoring. So we are going to try to factor this. Now remember, if you want to factor something, you want it to say equals 0 before you begin. When you factor, when you graph, when you use quadratic formula, you want it to say equals 0. Okay, so to make this say equals 0, I need to move my negative 8 to the left. So I would have x squared plus 9x, and then to move a negative 8, I would have to add it. And now it's going to have a 0. Okay, so first rule of factoring is to look for a GCF, and there's no GCF. Then it's 1, 2, 3 terms, so we're going to A times C rooftop it, and it's the easy one. So when I take A times C, I take 1 times 8, that's 8. I want the numbers to add to make B, the middle number, which is 9. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to make 8 and add to make 9. Well, that's that's 8 times 1. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. Hopefully that was easy for you. Because of the 1 in front, I get to go straight to the parentheses. Whatever letter you're working with goes in the front, and the numbers you found go in the back. So positive 8, positive 1. Okay, and then I'm going to set each of these equal to 0. So if I set my first factor, x plus 8 equal to 0, what would you get if you solved that equation? Negative 8. You would subtract 8 from both sides, and 0 minus 8 is negative 8. Okay, then we're going to set our other factor equal to 0, and what would we get if we set x plus 1 equal to 0? Negative 1. You would get rid of addition of 1 by subtracting 1, so you would get negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a rough sketch of this. This is just my x-axis, so I'm not going to do the whole x and y-axis. So these are your roots, solutions, x-intercepts. So this is where the graph would touch the x-axis, so it would touch at negative 8, and it would touch at negative 1. And then I look at this symbol right here. Because there's no equals, they would be open circles. I'm sorry, it looks like I closed them. I should have made a little tick mark instead. And then I'm going to draw a rough sketch of this parabola. So my A is positive, which means the graph would open up. So this is where the graph touches the x-axis. And so if the graph opens up, it would look something like this. Okay. So what I want to know is where the graph has values greater than 0. So I want to know where the x's have values so that the y's are greater than 0. So the y's are greater than 0 above the x-axis. So that would be from here to the left, and it would be from here to the right. This is where your y values are negative. That's when you're under the x-axis, but we want y values that are greater than 0. So y values greater than 0 happens above the x-axis. So from here to the left, from here to the right. So then I just have to know how to write that answer. So these numbers are smaller than negative 8. So I've got numbers smaller than negative 8. When there's the space in the graph, that's when you use or. And then these numbers are greater than negative 1. And so if I come over and I look at my answer choices, these are in set builder notation, but which one looks like what I wrote? B. X less than negative 8 or x greater than negative 1. It just has this additional x such that, which is called set builder notation. Okay, number 10 says the quadratic equation x squared plus 8x equals 3 is to be solved by completing the square. Which equation would be the first step in that solution? Okay, so when you complete the square, you do want the constant on the right. Complete the square, constant on the right. C. So the constant is already on the right. So first step accomplished. Next step, you are going to try to figure out what to put on this left-hand side so that this makes a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so this is when you take half of the middle number, half of 8 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So that means I need to have a 16 on this side. But if I add 16 to this side, I have to add 16 to this side. And that would be the next step. And that's what it is asking. Which equation would be the first step in that solution? So this is the first step of me working it, which is what answer choice D is saying. And then from there, I could keep going. Okay, number 11. Write an equation for the parabola whose vertex is at 312 and goes through this point. Okay, so there's a few ways that we could do this. So if I was to put this into vertex form, this is what vertex form looks like when you don't know any numbers. And the vertex is always the H and the K. And then a point at which the graph goes through is the X and the Y. So I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to do it, and then I'll show you another way. Okay, so the vertex is 312. Well, because it's multiple choice, let's look at the answers for a second. This means the graph would go right 3 and up 12. Well, if you were at 0, 0, and you went right 3 and up 12, would you land at 312? Yes. So this one has the right vertex. So vertex, check. Looks good. This one would go left 3 and down 12. Well, if you went left 3 and down 12, you would not be at 312. So this one does not have the vertex right. This one also goes left 3 and down 12, so the vertex is not right. This one goes right 3 and up 12. So right 3 up 12. Sure enough, that would put me at 312. So this one has the vertex correct. Okay, so now I know it's between A and D. So because it's multiple choice, I'm going to use my calculator to figure out the next answer. So I am going to put in equation A, 3 parentheses, x minus 3, close it, square it, plus 12. So I know it's got the right vertex. What I want to know is, does this graph go through the point 524? Well, let's see. Let's go to our table. Second graph, and let's see if 524 is there. And guess what? 524 is there. So that means A is the answer. Now, if I put in answer choice D, just to show you, that one is a -3 in the front. If I go to my table and I look for 524, guess what? It's not there. So that's why A is our answer. Now, if this was not multiple choice, then I would have to plug everything in. So my y would be the y coordinate of the point it goes through. So my y would be 24. A is what I would be solving for, because this number in the front is your A, and that's what I don't know. So I'd be solving for that. My x coordinate is the 5, minus my h is the 3, close it, square it, plus my k is the 12. So the vertex is always your hk, and the point the graph goes through is always your xy. So I could work out this equation. I'm just going to show you in case some of you want to know. So 5 minus 3 is 2. And then what's 2 squared? 4. So I have 4 here. The a's smushed against it, so that means the 4 and the a are multiplied. I'm going to bring down the plus 12, and the equals 24. So then to solve this equation for a, I'd get rid of addition of 12 by subtracting it. The 4a would drop down. The equals would drop down. 24 minus 12 makes 12. And then I would divide by 4, and that makes a is 3. And sure enough, looky, looky, our a is a 3. So you have a couple ways of how you could do it. All right, moving on. Number 12, find the exact solution of the system of equations. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph this and see if I can find the answer in the calculator. Now, it's ready to graph because they both say y equals. Okay, so I'm going to go to my y equals, and I'm going to type in x squared. And then my other equation is x plus 2. Okay, so I am going to first look at the picture. And we have two solutions, one here, one here. Wherever the graphs intersect, those are where the solutions are. So we have two of them, 1, 2. So I'm just going to see if I can find them in the table. So second graph, and here is an answer. You want to be looking where your y values are the same. So 2, 4 is an answer, because this is the 0.24 and this is the 0.24. And let's see. Oh, here's the other one where our y values are the same. So negative 1, 1, negative 1, 1. So negative 1, 1 is an answer and 2, 4 is an answer. So negative 1, 1 and 2, 4, which is answer choice A. Now, if you were to solve this algebraically, then I would do substitution. Bread, meat, bread. I would always put the linear equation in the first and last column. And then I would always put the quadratic in the middle. And then I would solve this with substitution. But I'm not going to do that because it was super easy in the calculator, and sometimes we need life to be super easy. Okay, let's do one more for this video, and then I'll stop it, and then I'll make another video for the rest of the review. Okay, this one's really easy. So it wants us to graph this inequality. So this is where you have to know how things are shaded. So first of all, if there is an equal sign, it is a solid graph. If there is no equal sign, it's a dashed graph. If it says y less than or equal to, the shading is below. And if it says y greater or y greater than or equal to, the shading is above. Okay, so let's look over here at our symbol. Is the shading above or below? Y less than, the shading's below. Is the graph solid or dashed? Dashed. If there's no equal sign, it's dashed. So it's below and it's dashed. Well, which graph has shading below and is a dashed graph? That one. The shading's below the parabola, and this is a dashed graph. This shading is above, this shading is above, this shading's below, but it is a solid parabola, so that means A is our winner, winner, chicken dinner. Okay, I'm going to stop this video here, and then I'll pick up with another video to explain the rest of the review. Smile!